good morning to all of you. I'm extremely thankful to ICS and MIT for inviting me for the 7th India Forum on China. So as you all know, the topic of my talk is is centralization going to have any kind of an impact on China's S&T in the context of innovation? So before I share some of my thoughts on this topic, I'd like to begin with certain kind of a preface, if one can call so. This whole contestation between centralization and decentralization is not something new in the context of China. It is a centuries-old, contestation. Even when, and in the post-1949 China, even when Mao was at the helm of affairs, Mao spoke of, ironically, administrative decentralization. Again, during the post-Mao period, when everyone was talking about economic decentralization, we all know that Deng Xiaoping and his comrades were very, non-hesitant in taking very tough calls when it comes to exhibiting their centralized decision-making apparatus. So there are different degrees of decentralization and there are different degrees of centralization. And this is very much an inherent part of the Chinese model of development. The second is, as far as science and technology is concerned, emphasis on science and technology is not something which is very current. Because in 1973, when the party started under Zhou Enlai talking about the 4 great economic modernizations, science and technology was one of the 4 domains which China started focusing on. Third, what is innovation in science and technology? So when we are talking about innovation in science and technology in the context of China, there are experts, in semiconductors, there are experts in technology who can talk about it. But what is more important in the context of China is, when we are talking about science and tech innovation, we are also talking about the larger policy ecosystem. And innovation in the context of China is also referred to as, quote unquote, policy experiments, which have stood in good stead for China in the last 25-30 years. So therefore, innovation in China has multiple meanings and not necessarily confined to science and tech. And there have always been tensions, as I said, between centralization and decentralization in the context of China. So therefore, given this kind of a system, you have always had a strong and decisive government. You have a system whereby the various local officials have been enticed with this whole nomenclatura or personal management system, whereby if they are successful in local experiments, their model will be emulated later at the national level through executive propaganda and through extensive media coverage. So when we look at centralization and decentralization in the context of China again, we also need to understand that the objectives of the party always change with the changing conditions there, leading to a certain kind of what scholars have called co-evolution of the political and economic system. So in an authoritarian system like that of China, it's always a huge challenge to live up to party's own image of what party calls that party should always have that kind of a policy which is, quote unquote, responsible policy. And the moment one is talking about responsible policy, what is responsible policy and what is not responsible policy leads to one of the most contested discussions in domestic Chinese politics, that is economics in command versus politics in command. So therefore, time to time, no matter whether it is economics in command or politics in command, there is always a new set of dynamic which governs the performance of the party, the rules that define performance of the party, and the various credible rules by which everyone plays the game. So sometimes, therefore, the government, the party state can give importance to market reforms as an end in itself, and sometimes the government, the party state can give emphasis to market reforms, to improve the economy, and whereas certain times it can use market reforms as an instrument to, address the common prosperity cause. So therefore, in the context of China, in this whole centralization, decentralization, contestation, there are 5 basic movements. So given that it's an authoritarian system, initially there is lack of information, so the government or the party state from the center initiates a certain number of policy measures. And when the certain policy measures are introduced, the other constituencies start responding to, and when they start responding to, they also, they are not only receivers or recipients of information, but they are also constituencies who relay information over a period of time. So this leads to certain kind of a policy movement, and this kind of a policy movement then leads to the government or the party state again responding to what is it that the market wants, what is it that the market is looking for. Now this leads to a certain kind of emergence of a new kind of equilibrium between the political and economic subsystems, and over a period of time gradually there are lots of tensions that come in. So therefore, when this kind of tensions come in, the government then again has to come back with politics in command, and it has to adapt itself to the new ecosystem, and so therefore it comes up with new kind of substitution strategy. So therefore, this kind of a dynamic keeps on happening, and that is where we need to understand this whole centralization, decentralization in the context of science and tech as well. Now coming to innovation, science and technology, it was only in 2006 that in China the first time you had the National Medium and Long-Term Science and Technology Plan, and for the first time a policy was made which China called it China's Innovation Strategy. It was also the first time when the former president of China, Hu Jintao, spoke about building an innovative country by endogenous innovation with Chinese characteristics. So this kind of a system has been going on for for the last more than 10-15 years, since 2006. After that, a Made in China policy has come, and now China is not only talking about Made in China, it is talking about innovating in China. And the 14th Five-Year Plan and the Socialist Modernization Plan are more about how the country should become technologically self-reliant. So then what is the fuss all about? Why is this whole centralization thing once again started coming to the picture? So in the post Mao era, when economic reforms have been introduced, largely we saw that China had what we call a system of bureaucratic decentralization. So you had what China calls points to surface approach. Points to surface. What are the points? Points means the various local experiments that are conducted by different provincial and sub-provincial leaders. And if those experiments are successful, then those are actually selectively taken by, and then it becomes part of the larger China model whereby the country can thrive. Now this points to surface model has come under severe strain after the emergence of Xi Jinping as the undisputed leader. And so therefore, Xi Jinping has brought in certain kind of centralization measures which are compelling China scholars to look at this whole thing, that will this kind of a centralization actually hinder China's innovative capacity in science and technology? Well, the answer is yes and no, but and it's still not very clear. But what is it that, let me very briefly highlight some of the key measures that has made Xi Jinping, this kind of a leader who is very, very much pro-centralization. So what has he done? And so people are saying that, his new system of top-down policy, which is in Chinese is called Ting Sang Sheqi. This top-level design is something which is, has been very much integral to his decision-making. As a result of this, there is a lot of friction between top level design and what China has been following till now, which is called crossing the river by feeling the stones. That is nothing but the trial and error method. So a new committee has been, leadership group has been formed in the Chinese Communist Party itself, which is headed by none other than the president. And 4 out of 7 Politburo Standing Committee members are, part of this core group. So given this kind of centralizing tendencies, what kind of an impact it is going to have? Is it going to motivate or demotivate local level leaders, or it is going to demotivate, and what impact it will have on local players? One thing under Xi Jinping, because of the China dream and overcoming century of humiliation and what has been followed by disruption of global tech value chains, people are also talking about China in terms of what is known as the entrepreneurial state, which is different from the developmental state. Now, this entrepreneurial state is something which takes a leadership growth in technology innovation through policies and programs of large investment and associated risk towards achieving tech innovation-driven project. So this calls for formulating a vision of a new era, engaging in early stage R&D, which the private sector is unable to. So therefore, given this, how do we look at the responses from the local leaders? As I said, it's a mixed bag out there. Some are arguing that this is not going to have much of an impact on local leadership as far as innovation in policy experiments is concerned in the context of science and technology. Why? Because research says, for example, there was a research which was conducted by scholars, certain set of scholars, Jessica Teets and all. They said that in the Zhejiang province, more than 70% of the cadres, local leaders who have been interviewed, they say that in the initial stages of the career itself, they know how far they are going to rise up in the system. So therefore, they are called, quote unquote, the ceilinged officials. So these ceilinged officials, given whatever little opportunities they have, they are very keen to exploit professional networks, and and certain personalities are innovation personalities, they call it. So therefore, individual personalities, this kind of a system basically, it is believed it's not going to impact much as far as the China's policy experimentation is concerned. But there are also some, I'll just take 1 minute. There are also some who basically believe that, no, that's not true. We are definitely going to have more and more innovation as we are going ahead. But this centralized decision making is something which, people are apprehensive. Why? Because under Xi's China, it is being said that it is more important to, what is that called? They call it, talking about politics has become more important than delivering performance. So the focus is on what they call in Chinese Chiang Chengzhi, which means talk about politics, rather than Chiang Chengqi, that is performance. So the focus today is all about how to promote under Xi, quote unquote, socialism with Chinese characteristics and promote the so-called four consciousness. So the focus is today on political loyalty, loyalty to the party, upholding the core leadership of Xi Jinping, and how does the various provinces align with the center. So given this, will innovation be inhibited in science and technology? Now given the ingenuity of the party, irrespective of various rounds of centralization and decentralization, to give credit, largely they have been successful. Will this time they will be successful and then again prove all of us wrong? That is something which we need to wait and see. So I'll conclude here. Thanks.